So here we've got our calico that we folded before. So we've got our two selvages along this edge and our fold down the middle here. This is our shirt block, our classic lady shirt, which is the one on the dummy here. And this pattern piece actually has the back pattern piece is actually one whole piece, and this is what they do in production. They don't do place on fold patterns in production. You have the whole piece, because if you were doing production on this, the fabric would actually be laid out, the whole way across. You wouldn't do it in a fold because it's just too bulky and it gets a bit cumbersome as you get lots of layers coming up. But because we're just cutting one here, we've got the fabric on the fold, so we could actually have the pattern folded in half. And most of the patterns that you do are, you just do half a back and then write place on fold there anyway, so you wouldn't have the whole piece. Okay, so usually with this, I'd start with when you're laying things up, always do the biggest pieces first, and then you fit the smaller pieces in as you go along. So I've got the back there. I can slip the front in next to it. You don't need, usually with a bit of experience, generally what I would do is not even have this gap here at all. I would actually sit the piece right against it and then just cut down there, and then that would separate the two pieces. But like starting out, you might want a bit of a gap between the two, so give yourself a centimetre gap to play with. Now we've got the back on the fold, we've cut one pair of the front because we've got the two layers, and then we've got this spare space here. So what I would do here is get one of the smaller pieces. This is the back yoke, and line that up so that it's parallel to the selvage here. One thing that I didn't mention just then either is, if you've got, this is all very square. You've got a square back, you've got a square side seam with no shaping, the centre front here and square here. So it's all pretty obvious that those lines, visually are parallel to the selvage and to the fold. But if you've got more abstract shapes, like when we do the sleeve, you can actually measure across. So you put your tape measure I've got it just on the grain line here, and I've measured across, and it's 18 inches, which is like 46 centimetres here. And then you move along and then you match it up as well. So you do the same thing here. So you have the line that you're following, and make sure that the measurement from the grain line to the selvage is the same measurement, and that way you know that the centre front here and the side seams are going to be parallel to the selvage and the grain line, which will make it easier to sew, and the seams won't warp and do odd things.
And Mark, why is it so important that the students mark their pattern pieces with the grain line and follow the grain line? We're always impressing upon them how important it is, but they possibly don't understand.
Well, a good point, Libby. I think the thing with this, and like I just said, this is all very obvious. We've got the back, we've got a parallel side seam. This is like, they're very boxy shapes in this shirt. Whereas, like you'll get pieces like the sleeve here, and the sleeve has the grain line down the middle, and so it would be easy, when you're laying up this sleeve, like somebody might, if there's no grain line on here, people, you might go, all right, well, I'll just put that there, so this edge is is parallel to the selvage, and then I can fit something in here. But it means that this is on the straight grain, this other side is on the bias grain, or it's off grain, and so this side is going to stretch and this side isn't, and the sleeve head as well, it's going to do some odd things because it's more on grain this way, but over here it's off grain that way, and weird things. So with this, you've got the grain line marked down the centre, which lines up generally with the notch in your sleeve head, and then this is a much better one to really get right. So from the grain line to the selvage there is 22 and 22. So that's good. So, and the thing is too, the more you use grain lines, the more fabric you lay up, the more fabric you cut. You really do develop an eye for like the grain line, and just visually seeing that grain line parallel to the selvage here. And even this one, like, it has a square base where the cuff gets sewn on. So, like, that helps a bit in visually, getting this right as well. Whereas, like, you do get pattern pieces, like the collar here. And this one actually has a grain line that goes through the centre back, so the pattern piece is going to go like this. But generally, I mean, the collar piece can go this way. Usually it goes this way. And even if you don't have, like a grain line the length of this way here, what you could do in that instance is just measure from the corner there to the selvage, and have it the same on the other side, so you know that it's all the way across. Some people they'll have their collar pieces cut as only half a piece, and then they like go and put the piece over here. But the thing is, if you're really, it can be really difficult to line up the fold of the fabric with the fold of the pattern here, or if it's not even the fold of the pattern, that's a cut edge that you have to place on the fold. So you can see that if I've got this lined up here, if I just like have that, the tiniest little bit, if it's 1 millimeter there, it's 5 or 6 millimeters here, so that throws off the shape of the collar. And it also means that when you cut the piece out, that the piece sort of goes into the fold and then back out again. Whereas if you have the whole piece, you can place that on the fabric, you cut through both layers, and you end up with 2 layers that are exactly the right shape, with with right angles going to the center back. And you just have to cut through the 2 layers to have the whole pieces. Whereas again, if you only have half a piece, you put that on the fold, and then you put another one there, and then you've sort of got this strange wasted space here anyway.
And it's more cutting too, isn't it?
Exactly, it's more cutting, yeah. So this, you just cut once, you get it's all nice and even. So always do these pieces, collar pieces, always try to do them as a whole piece, not just a half piece.
And however they fit into the fabric most effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And it can depend on the, like on the print as well. We saw the elephant print, and so.
Yeah, well, stripes would be a perfect thing, wouldn't they? Which way you want the stripes to go.
Exactly. So with this here, actually, this is quite interesting with the elephant print, because we would want the elephants, to with their feet around the neckline, so the elephants are actually standing up around the neck. The thing is, though, sometimes you can look at this with the collar, and you actually put the collar on top of it, and if you did that and cut that, when you cut out the collar, because this is the edge that joins onto the collar stand, when you've cut this and you're sewing it up, what would happen if you cut it that way is that the elephants would all be upside down, so they'd be right side up on the stand, but they'd be upside down when you flip the collar back. So this collar would actually have to turn around this way, so that when the collar folds down around the neck, the elephants aren't standing on their heads. So that's why important to really think about these things. Okay, so 2 biggest pieces. Here we've got our collar here. I mean, this is pretty lucky. This is folded in half, and it really does work quite nicely, just this spacing. And again, I've only got a little gap there, like 5 mil gap, but that's fine. You could, if I was doing it, like with my experience, I'd probably put the 2 together and then just sort of mark a line down the middle and the back notch on the yoke here, and then just cut that one line, and that would separate the 2 pieces. And then we have our sleeve piece here. So
getting that grain line on the sleeve right means that you're going to be sewing that seam when you sew the sleeve together. You're going to be sewing it, and it'll be easier to sew because you've got the same grain on that edge of the fabric.
Exactly. If you've got one that's on more of a slant than the other one, the sleeve will twist around as it's going down the arm. So that's why that's important. So I've just measured. You saw me measuring. This time I'm measuring from the fold to the grain line to see that they're even. Our other pieces here, we just have our collar. So because we've got this gap here, we don't have enough fabric to have it going across with the collar. So we're having that going just up and down, our collar and our collar stand. And again, we would have, this should have a grain line on it going this way as well. But we'd just measure from here to the selvage and from here to the selvage. So you can see, it looks even, but it was actually, nearly a centimetre out. So get that same, and the same from here. You can just measure from here to here and here to here to get that collar piece right. And then we have the cuff. Again, like the cuff could go either way. We only need one pair of these because that's on the fold. So just depending, this is fine this way. Again, it'll depend on, like we were saying before with stripes. Usually the stripes would go down, which is why usually stripes go around the neck and they go across on the yoke because it's easier to fit the pieces in like that. So if we've got stripes going down here, then this cuff piece, because we have stripes going around the cuff this way, we would have to move the cuff piece and put it at a right angle, parallel to the selvage. This is just an interfacing piece which we don't need. And we've got the placket, the sleeve placket piece, which is this piece here, and we are missing the little binding piece for the placket opening. But when we remake that piece, we'd be able to just slide it in there anyway. Okay, and then that means then that all of you've just got this little spare piece of fabric here, which you might fit a pocket in there or something anyway. So yeah, it's just try and keep everything taut and neat together.
It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it?
Exactly, and it is interesting. And this, the way that we've done it here is so that this is what I was talking about before with things being directional. So the neckline is here going down towards the hem. The top of the back is here going down towards the hem. The sleeve head going down towards the hem. Sometimes when people have a directional fabric, they actually put an arrow on the end of their grain line, and the arrow, would indicate that the fabric print has to go down that way, just to keep on track. The other thing you could do, just while we're talking about it here, is if you're not worried about the grain line, what we might do is just flip these pieces over here. If I flip this over, that goes there. This goes up a little bit, so we can put the sleeve in this way. Actually, what we might do, here we go. I'm off on a tangent now. So if we pull this over so that the front is near the selvage, we have the yoke in there, and you can see this is where the sleeve is at the minute when the front was over here. But because I've just pushed it towards the edge there, I can actually move this sleeve head all the way down so it fits into that curve there. And then with your pieces, I'd probably put the collar piece over here. Collar stand here, the cuff, and the placket, and then the bind would go in there as well. And so you can see, even though this is now all going the other direction, you can see how just playing with the pieces, can make a difference with how much fabric you use. And that's why it's a good idea, if you know the width of the fabric you want to buy, you can actually do up a lay plan with the patterns, just on a table. If you go from the side of the table, and half the width of the fabric is there, you can put some sticky tape or put a grading rulers or something to indicate that's half the width of your fabric. You can do a lay plan and measure how much fabric that's going to take, so then you only maybe buy like another 10 centimeters rather than saying, I'm doing a shirt, I'll buy 3 meters of fabric and then not using 1.5 meters of it. So, so that's where the lay plan can come in handy. And another good thing too, if you've got the lay plan worked out, like this fits on the fabric, I'm just going to buy the fabric now so that I know which way I want to do it. Take a photo of the lay plan on your phone so you have that as a record. So when you come to lay it up in the actual fabric, you already know how it's going to be laid up on the fabric.